the problem under discussion was loop. So if we have a for loop which have 10 lines, and if this for loop was going to execute for 10,000 times, so on each time JVM has to pick up the line from the for loop, and then it has to convert it into the machine code and then execute it. So this will create a bottleneck. So JVM thought of it and evolved and come up with the solution, and the solution is called as a hotspot. So why the terminology is picked is, like, we know that in the real world, if there is a friction, if object is getting used very extensively, then that will catch up the heat. Now, if you are, let's say you have an object, or you have a piece of a code which is very extensively getting used, then that is going to cause trouble for your computer also. So they are applying the real world terminology that if the piece of the code which is required very extensively during the execution of the program or the application, then we'll call that piece of the code as a hotspot in the program. Now, this hotspot becomes a bottleneck. Like at every time, the JVM has to pick the line, then take it inside it, convert it into the machine code, and execute it. To counter this, what Java did is, or what Java community did is, once the code, if the block is marked as a hotspot, then JVM will take that block, it will convert it into a machine code, it will execute the machine code. At the same time, the same machine code will be added to the same .class file which contains the bytecode. So what happens is, in your bytecode file, the machine code will be appended for the hotspot area. So next time, when the piece of the code which is marked as a hotspot is required for the execution, then JVM knows that, okay, this section is marked as a hotspot, and there is no need to convert this piece of a code into machine code. Its machine code is already present into the .class file. Let's pick the bytecode. Let's pick the machine code directly and execute it. So this is how JVM improvise, or JVM even remove the problem of looping. I hope you got the concept of hotspot. Can I get some quick replies in chat window if you got the concept of hotspot? Okay, please repeat again, Aditya. Okay, fine. So we have to repeat it. Fine. So let me write a piece of a code. What I'll do is I'll pick up a notepad file, plain notepad file for the discussion purpose. Now let's say you have call for integer I is equal to, let's say, 1, I is less than or equal to 1000, and then I plus plus. And here are some code like line number 1, then there is a line number 2, then there is a line number 3. So if you have this file with you, then what JVM has to do is, it has to take the first line, then write a parallel machine code, create a machine code of it, then go on to the next line, then go on to the next line, and again write a machine code of it, or create a machine code of it. Then it will go to the next line, again a machine code. It will do this machine code, it will create a machine code for each and every line in your for loop. So machine codes are created and executed. Now what happens is, this is a single iteration. When next iteration start, again the program has to convert the bytecode into the machine code. So it starts. So first line converted, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So this is our second cycle of machine code conversion. The loop is going to execute 10,000 times, right? So you can imagine now this is going to happen 10,000 times. So this piece of a code, which is extensively utilizing the JVM, is called as a hotspot. Why it is called as a hotspot? These all lines will be converted into machine code 10,000 times. This is one pass. This one column represents one pass. Right now we have three columns. That means these lines are converted only three times into the machine code. We are yet to pass this line 9,997 times. So I should add 9,997 more columns to this notepad file. Is it clear up to this point? Aditya and Sunil. Sunil is okay. Parth. Okay, fine. Now, when you have such a code which has to be converted very extensively into the machine code, JVM was not dealing with such a kind of concept in the early days, and the developers really picked it up very early and found out that okay, this is creating a bottleneck for the JVM. Now they have to provide a solution. So what solution is proposed is, as soon as the JVM sees the code which is going to get executed very frequently, now this code is going to get execute very frequently, 10,000 times in a row is a very high frequency. So as soon as your JVM identifies a code which is going to get executed very frequently, what it does is it come back. Let's assume this right side is a machine code, and this left side is a byte code. So what JVM does is, as soon as it identifies that this particular line is going to get executed very extensively, it start writing the machine code in the file .class file where the object code is stored actually. And look at this, we are not replacing the byte code, we are adding the machine code alongside with the byte code. So now your .class file have access to both machine code as well as byte code of the source code. Now next time, as your .class file now have access to both machine code as well as its equivalent byte code, when next time the code is required, there is no need to convert the byte code into machine code. So there will be no addition of the fourth column now. So what happens is, when this same piece of a code is required for the execution, JVM, instead of loading the byte code, JVM will now load the equivalent machine code and it will directly execute it. So this block is marked as a hotspot. As soon as the block is marked as a hotspot, JVM starts adding machine code to the .class file alongside of byte code. So byte code is also retained, machine code is also retained. Now next time when this particular byte code is required for the execution, there is no need to convert the byte code into machine code. You can directly start taking the machine code from the .class file and execute it. So it is how it improvises. Is concept is clear? Parth, Aditya? Great. So, okay, great. Now, I have a question. Why JVM is not removing the byte code? When JVM identified the block as a hotspot, then it added the machine code in the file, but it did not remove. It have added the machine code in the file, but it did not remove the byte code, which is original code. It is keeping both versions, machine code as well as byte code in the .class file. Can anyone tell me, if, when you have actually access to the machine code, why JVM is still keeping the byte code in the file? Anyone? I'll wait for 1 minute. Can anyone write the answer why JVM is not removing the byte code? It is keeping the both versions, like it is keeping the machine code as well as byte code for the region which is marked as hotspot. Anyone have the answer? Okay, great. So there are no answers. Is okay to answers if machine code is get corrupted. If my Linux user tries to run the program, then JVM cannot convert that bytecode into the machine code. Yes, so two people have got the correct answer. Three people now. It's because it's a platform independent. Bytecode is used on any platform. If a Mac Linux user tries to run the program, then JVM can convert that bytecode to the machine code. That is the answer. If machine code gets corrupted, that's not the answer, Aditya. That's the wrong thing. Okay, so Harshit has got the answer. Sunil Patil has got the answer. Sunil Patil, and then Tanuja is also having a correct answer because it's a platform independent. It's a quite straightforward answer, so it has to keep it. Whereas I've got some reasoning. Then Tejaswani Poddar. Okay, so two answers are same. Fine. So that is the answer. Like your JVM is your, like, what we can say, your Java has to keep its platform independence in terms of execution. To satisfy that platform independenceness, the bytecode has to retain the dot class file has to retain the bytecode. It cannot simply delete the bytecode from the dot class file, because if that dot class file is shipped from your, let's say you are using a Windows computer, if that dot class file is shipped from the Windows computer to a Linux computer, then that machine code is of no use. Then again, JVM has to look for a bytecode and then convert it into the machine code. So that's why the dot class file will have both versions, like it will have a machine code as well as bytecode inside it. Then the last point, I was supposed to cover this in the last lecture. Let's start. So my remark is like journey is just going to start, and there will be no end to learning of Java. The industry says that the strict OOP programming is going to stay there for another 10-15 years very heavily. There will be, like, it will be there in all the application areas. So I'm sure that many of you are going to see the Java throughout your, as a software developer, or first IR career in your life. So let's start with actual coding. So before starting coding, like, you have to install JVM on your computer and a JDK on your computer. So what you can do is you can go to the, let's go to the Google, simply type JDK download, search the link, go to the oracle.com website. From this website, you can download JDK and its documentation also. We will talk about what is this documentation later. So you click on this JDK download, it will take you to the page where you have to pick up the operating system, like whether you are using a Linux or Windows. According to your operating system, click on the download, then you will be redirected to some accept agreement and all. Then download the JDK and start installing it. While installing, it will ask you for the setting up the path. Like, I have a software, I have changed the default path. So by default, the program is getting saved into the C file, and in the program files directly, it will try to install your Java. I'm not going to do it for my personal computer. There is a reason for that. I will share the reason shortly. Let me try to show you the step. Let's go to the JDK. Do I have, yeah. So if I click on this and if I say yes, it will start picking up the setup. The file is already downloaded on my computer. So I'm not going to, should I reinstall it? I should say no. So what happens is you just have to go and clicking next, and you will come at a point when it will ask you to choose the path for the where to install. I think you should change. I think it's not like you have to compulsory, you can go with the default setting. But what I recommend is choose some other folder, not the C drive's program files. So what I've done is in my D drive, I've created another folder called as programs, in which I've installed my Java and JDK. So when you install JDK on your computer, it will install two environments on your computer. One is a Java development kit, which is required for developing a program, which have a Java C compiler. The second thing is, from our presentation, I am very sure that you are able to recall, like, when you want to develop and test your program, you need two environments. The environments are like, to execute, you need a JVM, and to develop, you need Java C compiler. And if you are a developer as well as like if you are a developer, you have to write the code and then you have to test it. So you are going to need both JavaScript compiler as well as JVM. So when you download JDK setup, this both environment, and when you download and install this JDK setup, the both environments get installed on your computer automatically. Like it will install JavaScript compiler, entire Java development kit on your computer, as well as it will install JVM on your computer. But let's say you are just interested in executing the Java application and not you are not really interested in developing a Java application. Then what someone can do is the person can look for JRE download. Person can look for a GRE download. Somebody has started a mic, I guess. Dear students, please check mic. I am getting some background noise. Everyone should be in mute mode. Okay, so the noise has stopped. Fine. So what you can do is you can go and click search for GRE download and go to the website, again the same Oracle website, and let's get this Oracle website loaded. And now here you can install this. You can directly download this GRE. So Java runtime is a kind of an environment which have JVM and GIT inside it. So if you need to do only execution, then download only GRE and install it. But if you are a developer, then you have to download a JDK. But there is no need to download JRE in that case, because JDK will come up with both environments. It will come up with the development kit as well as with the GRE environment. So as a student, you need to both compile as well as execute the program. So it's better that you should download JDK environment. Anybody have a question? Hand raised by Swapnil Zadav. Swapnil, you can put your question in chat box.
May I talk, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, so there are various Java flavors you mentioned in your last lecture.
Yes.
So my doubt is what exactly is difference between different flavors? Is the syntax is different, or what is the difference?
Syntax, no, very same. Java is an open source language, so you can pick up any platform. You'll find the same syntax is coming. There will be not even a semicolon difference between any of the platform. Swapnil, mute yourself, and then if you have another question, then you can again unmute yourself. Okay, so OpenJDK is available. Then OpenJDK, like see, Java is an open source platform, so anybody can go to the Oracle website. Earlier, it was a Sun Microsystem. Download the source code and tweak with it and come up with its own flavor. So Java as such is not going to have any different syntaxing style. The syntax will remain same. So what you can do is you can write a Java source code in using OpenJDK. Take that OpenJDK program into the Windows platform where you can install Sun JDK or Sun Oracle, not a Sun JDK. You can install now Oracle JDK on your computer and then have the same Oracle compiler compile the code which I have already compiled using OpenJDK. So source code written on any computer compiled will be compatible with the different flavors of JDK. Doesn't matter whether it's a Oracle JDK, whether doesn't matter if it's a Open JDK. In the Linux system, if I go to the website, let me go and search a complete. Okay. So what I'll do is I will open up another window, and I will not use a Yahoo search engine. I'll use Google search engine. So if I go here and if I click on this download JDK, you will find that Linux and Debian JDK package is also available from the Oracle. There is a RPM package is also available from the Oracle. You can have a binary which you can then make install for the Linux. For Mac also there are some same thing is available. As well as if you are really using a Debian environment, then you can simply open up a command prompt make sure that you have a internet connectivity in your Debian system. Maybe it's Ubuntu, maybe it's Mint. Then you can go and type this command sudo apt-get install uh, open JDK, and it will install OpenOffice JDK on your computer. So this is available by default in Ubuntu or Mint, or let's say Kubuntu, or your Kali Linux, the flavors which are belongs to the Debian system or even Debian operating system. If you go to the Linux of RPM platform, then you can install like yum install open JDK. So this is called as a yellow dock updater modified. You can use this and install OpenJDK in the RPM managed packaging system, which is CentOS, Red Hat, Fedora. In those kind of operating system, you can install RPM packages. In the Debian system, you can install OpenJDK. Also, you can take these files, dev files, RPM files, and install in the Linux environment. This installation will install OpenJDK. If you download these binaries and install them, then it will install Oracle JDK. But it is not going to change programming style at all. Any other question? Any other question from a chat box? I have something. Okay. OpenJDK versus Amazon Corretto. Okay, fine. So you're talking about cloud programming. If time permits, we will directly write some APIs using cloud programming. So if you are writing, like say, if JVM is also available in your mobile and JDK is required to develop the applications on your mobile phone. So there is a toast call in the Android, or there is a call called as you can create something called as a network gateway in the Android system, or you can create something called as an activity in the Android system. So when you create an activity system, the .java file is created. I think again someone is unmuted himself, herself. Please mute because I get a background noise. Dheeraj Nagargozi, your mic is unmute. Can you mute it? Okay. Then Dhaneshwar Patil, I'm going to mute you. Unmute. Don't unmute, guys, unless and until you have a question. Otherwise, I keep on hearing what is going on in your home and whether you have some roadside traffic and all that. All voices are audible to me. So make sure that your mic is mute unless and until you are not asking a question. So I was talking about particularly developed JDK environment. So let's make one point very clear. What you are facing is not a core Java. So there is a concept, something called as a core Java, advanced Java, Java for mobile, Java for let's say enterprise. So there are flavors of Java platforms. So if you are comparing like a specific platform, which is let's say Java EJB, Enterprise Java Beans, then there are some additional things which are present apart from Java. So this is the question posted by Harshit Doshi is what is OpenJDK and Amazon Corretto. So if you tweak with the JDK source code and come up with your own flavors, then you will either have some additional system calls, or you should have additional classes, methods, or you may remove some of the existing classes, existing methods which are present in the OpenJDK or standard JDK standard. So you can even do it. Like what you can do is you just take the code from Oracle website or the open source environment, download it, delete some classes and call it as a Harshit JDK and launch it in the market. That's fine. But again, there is a small difference in what you're doing in that Harshit JDK and the standard JDK library. Okay, Swapnil, to everyone, no. Can you unmute yourself, Swapnil, and tell me what is still you are not getting? Yeah.
Yes.
Hello?
Answered it before. Nothing, sir.
In chat box, I said something no. What is that?
Yeah, is there any doubt or not? So I said
Okay,
no.
okay, fine. So I thought I was answering you and you're not getting it still. Fine. So I hope I have made it clear. Like standard core Java is a different story. You can download the source code, tweak with it, and come up with your own flavors. But then they will have a difference. Otherwise, if you have standard Java source code compiled and come up with your own standard, then there will be no difference. You can absolutely write, suppose right now some of you are using Linux or Mac, write the source code, take the source code in any of the environment and compile it. It will definitely compile. Doesn't matter which compiler you're using. You are using a compiler from Oracle, you're using a compiler from OpenJDK, you are using a Oracle compiler from, let's say, any other platform available, like in Debian JavaC compiler, or maybe Linux RPM JavaC compiler, or now the Oracle's compiler. The same source code will compile in this using these three all compilers, no problem. So let's say one friend writes a code, passes it to the other friend who is using a different OS and a different compiler. Still, the code will compile without any problem. Okay, if at all the code has compiled on the first computer. If you pass the code with the errors, then it will give error on all platforms. Fine. So let's continue with our discussion. Now, if once you install the JDK on your computer, once the JDK is installed on your computer, let me cancel this all. Once the JDK is installed on your computer, you have to verify whether it is properly installed or not. So you should open up command prompt and you can fire up two commands. First is Java. So when you get this output, it is sure that you have got the setup of JRE working. So when I type Java and enter, this assures me that JRE is working fine, Java runtime environment, which is responsible for JVM and JIT. And once the JDK is installed, and if you type Java C, right now you're going to see the output, but initially you won't see this output. The command prompt will say we can't locate, we don't know what is Java C. It will give error, Java C is not recognized as internal or an external command. Why this is so? Java C is installed in some folder which is not added in your environment path variable, whereas JRE is added. So what we have to do is open up the computer, go to the folder where you have installed Java. So in my case, it is in my D drive. Go to the Java folder. Inside it, you will find Java development kit. Go to the JDK. There is a bin directory. Go inside this bin directory. Now, if you scroll in this bin directory, you will find something called as Java C. So these are the commands that we can execute or we need while developing a Java application. So there is also Java C compiler inside it, which you can find. This is an application program. So this path is not by default added into your Windows environment variable. By the way, this is not required in Linux system. This is not required in Debian, RPM. You go in any environment, this path setting is initially not required. You can directly fire up the commands on the terminal and you will find Java as well as Java C. This is particularly required in Windows. So go to the address bar, press Ctrl C, copy this path where the system should look for the command Java C. Then go to the search bar of your computer and type environment variable. So open up this environment variable. Here you will find many tabs. You have to select compulsory this advanced tab on your system properties and go to environment variables. Here you can find there is a path called as Java_home. So this path will not be present initially on your system. So what you can do is click on new, type the path name as Java_home and press Ctrl V where the JavaC command is there and press OK. Now I'm not going to click on OK because I've already added Java home in my system variables. Why the variable? Why not type any other variable name like let's say APL session? That's fine. It will work on the command prompt. Why I'm picking Java_home is many other environments like your Eclipse or maybe Android Studio or maybe Visual Studio. These systems are going to look for a variable called as Java_home to find where the Java C is installed or available. So that is industry accepted standard that the JDK's path has to be set using a variable called as Java_home. So that's why we have to pick the same path. Giving any other name will not make any difference till you are using the JavaC compiler using a command prompt. But it is highly recommended that you should use variable name as Java_home. Once you do that, the path variable will be available like D programs Java folder inside that JDK, and in bin folder my JavaC command is there. Once you do it, click on OK and again click on OK here. Still the command won't be there. You have to close the command prompt and start it freshly. After setting the environment path, again start the command prompt, and now if you type Java C, the command will be made available to you. Any doubt in steps, or you got the steps? No doubt, got it. Okay, fine. So let's write our first Java program in that case. So what I've done is I've picked up a E drive, and in that I'll go to my software projects. Then I'll say my Java, or let's say create a folder called as apl underscore b, and let's go to that folder. And now in this one, I will create my first file, notepad first dot java. So I'm going to make use of let's develop a program which will just display this is the first program string on the screen. So I'll write something called as class. You are aware that what is the meaning of a class. Then I'll say first. And now the first question is why I'm writing a class. Like in C, if we want to just display this is the first program, int main would have worked. And here you could write cout and the text that you want to display. That would have worked. But if you can recall from our slides that in the slides we mentioned that Java is why to learn Java. The very basic tier was because you already know OOP, some of it, which is OOP, object oriented programming. And the second tier was saying rather it is a strict OOP. So what do you mean by strict OOP? We will come across many flavors where the strict OOPness will hit us. Now I have to write the main method in the class. So see, the main method is also inside a class, and that is compulsory. This is a standard signature for writing a basic hello world or a basic text displaying program in Java. Then the main method is going to accept argument of type string args. Now to display on the screen, I have to write system, which is a package. Again, there is out, which is a sub package inside it, and there is a method called as println. In this, I will pass the text that I want to display. This is first Java program. Fine. Now look at this. Even your main method is inside a class. So in the case of Java, you cannot have even hello world program without making use of a class. So if you want to get anything under execution, then you must use class in Java. So that is the first reason why Java is called as a strict OOP. If you remove this class, this program will not compile, will not execute. So even a main method is inside a class. You cannot write a single program in Java which do not have a class with it. Everything must be inside a class. These things make your Java a strict OOP. These are the early introductory points which are going to make your Java strict OOP. Now, how to compile? If I say Java C first dot Java, and if everything is correct, the program will compile. So program has compiled. Now what we can do is we can type Java and say first, and the code will execute. So when we are saying Java C, we are calling a Java development kit. Once the compilation is successful, you will find a first dot class file is created. This class file contains a bytecode, and this class file which contains a bytecode has to be given to a JVM for the execution. It do not go automatically. So how we submit this dot class file to the JVM for the execution is we write Java space first and hit enter. So this command Java space first submits your first dot class file which have a bytecode to JVM for the execution. And the JVM starts execution. Now we have to understand two major important points in the main method. Why this main method is declared as static and why this main method is declared as public. So public and static, we have to understand the reasons why these two words are used while declaring a main method. Before that, any doubts? Let's post doubts in the chat box very quickly if you have any. You can unmute yourself and ask the doubt, no issues. Fine. So I guess everybody is with me and there is no doubt. So let's understand why this static and public keyword is used while declaring a main method. I'll take help of a paint for drawing a environment. Let's say, let's go to the command prompt. Let me show you. So we have a first.java file. After compiling this, we get first.class file. And in this first.class file, we have a bytecode for the main method. So the compiled environment something should have something like this. Like you have a main method. You have a main method which is required for the execution. Now, who is going to execute your program? Your program will be executed by JVM. So JVM has to execute your program. Right? Now, JVM, to execute this program, JVM has to access this main method. JVM has to access this main method to execute the program. But main method is not directly available in the source code or the bytecode. Main method is enclosed inside a class. So as the main method is enclosed inside a class, let's show it correctly in the diagram. So let's say this is the class and the class name is first. So a main method is inside a class called as a first and your JVM wants to access it. Now it is not possible technically. We know that if anything is inside a class, then you must have to create object of that class to access it. Like a C++, if you have a class A, so there are only 5 minutes remaining, the meeting will terminate automatically. If it terminates, tomorrow we'll start with the same point, no issues. So let's say I have class A in C++, and if this class contains a public domain or public section, and I have data method inside it, to call this data method, what you have to do is, in the main method, you have to create an object. And using this object, you have to call the method data, and this is fine. But what has happened is, see, to call a method, you must have to create an object, right? You have to create an object while calling a method. Now, what we are doing is we are shifting this main method in the class itself. Now, how come main method start? It is inside a class. So you have to create an object. So what happened in here is, what happens in this case is, let me go to home, let me draw oval shape. So you need main method to create an object of a class, to create an object of a class. To create an object of a class, to make this execute, JVM has to start execution of a main method. Now JVM needs a main method. How somebody can access a main method? It is inside a class. You need to create an object. To create an object, JVM has to execute a main method again, so it comes to JVM. Now JVM wants to access a main method. I need to access a main method. How do I access? Create an object. To create an object, you have to go to JVM. JVM needs a main method. So it creates a circular dependency. So round and round, this cycle has to be broken. And we know that in C++, if you mark something as static, if you mark, let's say, create another method called as static void d1. Now, if you mark this method as a static, what we can do is, let me cut this part and bring it outside of a class. What we can do is, we can write void a : d1 and the content inside a d1. And to call this method, we do not need to create a object. What we can simply write it is : d1, and this will call the method. Now to call this d1, we do not need an object. We can directly call it. Why it is not required to create an object? Because d1 is marked as static. The same style has been adapted by Java, and this static keyword is added to the declaration of a main method, which is a unique point. Why it is not required in C++? Because main method is independent of the class. In Java is a strict OOP. Everything is inside a class. So if you want to go inside a class and call a main method, then this main method must be declared as a static. After declaring a main method or a static, JVM, without creating an object of class first, can reach to the main method. And I am very sure that you know why it is declared as public. If you don't make it public, by default, section is private. Once the section is private, you can't access it outside of a class. So if main method becomes private, nobody will be able to access it outside of a class. JVM is not a member of a class. JVM is something living entity which is not part of a class. So if your JVM is not part of a class, how JVM could access the main method? So that's why main method is again declared as public. So that is important part. Why the main method is declared as public and static. So could JVM access main method without dealing with the class? Have I made point clear? Are there any doubts, or you understood why main method is declared as public and static? Yes, good. Great. Great. Fine. So everybody have got the point why main method is declared as public and static. Let's go on and modifying the program. I'll quit this window. Let me close, don't save. Let's remove this C++ example. Now let's add one more class in the same source code. I'll say class second, and I'll put one more main method inside this class second, public static void main, and I'll say string